Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to greet you in many of our cities today, quite literally live from one of the most, and I mean this sincerely, one of the most beautiful parts of the country. Let me make my point here. I drove along the highway. Nobody's got better colors in the fall season than does this most beautiful part of my home state. And I want to say something else. At a time when this country appears to be falling apart, we've come to you to find out what might be your idea regarding what ails us. And we've also brought your congressman with us who happened to vote no against the first budget package and then came back and voted no again. Now, wait a minute. Hold it. I haven't even told them where we are. If this isn't Heartland, I don't know what is, and I certainly welcome and am pleased to extend an invitation to all of those who are watching around the country. On behalf of all of those here in the beautiful Stambaugh Auditorium, you got to see the Mahoning Valley, and I want you to know something else. If we don't make it here, we don't make it anywhere. This is Youngstown, Ohio. Now, listen. We got problems here? Sure. So do you out there watching on television. We got ideas here? Yes, just like you do, and we're going to exploit this hour here to find out what some of them are. Let me give you just a glimpse of what your congressman said from the well of the House in the middle of the night, late Thursday night, on the president's budget package. He was ready to shut the country down. Am I lying to you? Watch this.
Shut it down. We're better off with a short-term shutdown of this government than putting into practice and law a budget that threatens our national security and the freedom of our people.
Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, your Congressman Jim-Traficant. Okay. All right, we'll get you all wired up here, Congressman. Tell me why you would shut the place down rather than what? Let me get you a mic here now. Testing one.
Testing. You got me?
I think we do, yeah. Give it a little more power on the mic. Thank you.
You're in the homeland of America, the microcosm.
We'll get you. A little more volume, please, on the Congressman. We'll give you another mic here, Congressman.
You know, I'll take this thing off if you don't hurry up here.
Go right ahead. You'd rather shut the country down than what?
Phil, I don't want to shut the country down. No one wants to do that. But you can't keep having the government shotgun you at the last minute, putting pressure on, trying to get you to pass a budget that raises taxes on the American people, on the poorest people in this country, and the middle income that are being taxed to death. And I think at some place you have to draw the line. I said, let's shut the government down temporarily if we have to, but let's do one thing. Let's not put another law into practice that threatens the national security of this nation, and let's take a stand on behalf of the people.
Well, now, you've got to raise taxes, Congressman. even my president acknowledges that. You don't?
Well, I think you raise taxes as a last resort. We spend $150 billion to protect NATO countries. Japan and Germany are doing quite well. I think it's time we send them a bill and cut half of that. I think there's one other thing. I think there's one other thing that's very important, Phil. We ship $20 billion a year in foreign aid and billions more in international assistance. What about a little domestic aid for America? Let's cut 50% at least of that money. And let's put our accounts in order without raising taxes.
And on the issue of Medicare and other, as you know, you just got here. And I'm pleased to work for a company that was able to provide an airplane for you. You've quite literally been up all night. you voted against the Democratic package. You voted against the Republican package. You voted against the Democratic package. You're right in there with all those conservative Republicans last night. How did you feel?
Phil, I believe that America is unique and great because we have a two-party system. When we start developing one party and all the politicians in Washington start looking alike, then the American people don't have a clear and distinct choice. Let me say this. I believe that the national policies that have been in place for the last 10 years has made the members of Congress nothing more than trustees in a bankruptcy proceeding. I say it's time to stop. I don't care if it's a Republican initiative or a Democrat initiative. If it's bad, you stand up and say it's bad, and you work to change it.
Yeah. What was bad about what you voted for?
There's $134 billion in there in this new budget resolution.
This one that this morning, early this morning.
And after we're out from underneath the gun, the Ways and Means Committee is going to sit back and they're going to conjure up ways to tax the American people. Now, I'm an individual who doesn't look what people say. I watch what they do. And in the last 10 years, every time there have been taxes, the rich have gone off very much scot-free, but the working people have taken it on the chin. So I have no reason to believe they're not going to do the same thing this time. And I say one other thing.
Yeah.
I say one other thing. I think it's time that we stop that, and if you have to say no, you say no and hold your ground.
Yes, sir.
Morning. After 8 years of Ronald Reagan leading this country down the primrose path, and now George Bush going in the second year, when is the Democratic leadership going to get some backbone and say no? No to this military buildup. We're a military wartime budget. Stop throwing money in this abyss called the Pentagon and everything the president wants.
How do you feel about that, Congressman?
Well, it's very simple. Ronald Reagan increased and, in fact, doubled defense spending. While he did that, he cut taxes. There's no free lunch. Now we've come to reconcile the fact that this didn't work. These policies didn't work. I believe if Ronald Reagan would have coupled those initiatives with an aggressive fair trade program, we may be in a lot better shape, but he didn't. He let these foreign nations rip our shores. Let me say one other thing to you. You brought up a good point, though. The Democrats, over the last 8 years, there were enough of them that voted with that president. The Democrats deserve a lot of the blame, too. I'm not here laying blame on George Bush or Ronald Reagan, but I am saying this, and I said it last night. It's time for the Democrat Party, who has a clear majority, to set an agenda for the American people and challenge these policies. And if they can't do that, they don't deserve the majority support they have.
I got to get this in now, Congressman. I didn't look it up, I'm ashamed to tell you, but I'm going to bet you a Big Mac.
Don't be betting, Phil.
I'm betting you.
You know, I'm still the sheriff around here, and they're starting to argue about that.
Listen. Now, wait a minute. If you're so smart, how come your district voted for Reagan both times, and I'll bet you they voted for Bush, too, in 1980?
My district was the only district in the state of Ohio that held against the Republican policies of the last 10 years.
When?
In every single election, they had voted for the Democrat. But let me say this, and I think this is very important. I think that we've come to recognize that there's a difference between a Democrat and a Republican. Their policies are different. I've voted for some Republicans in my life, and I'm sure that many constituents here have as well. But when it comes to national politics, you want to look at their program. What do their programs do? How do they promulgate those programs? And how do they develop them? And what are they intended to do? And our people very carefully analyze that, and I give them an awful lot of credit. One other thing, we lost 55,000 steel-working jobs that average $10 to $14 per hour. They come in here and replaced it with $3.50 to $5.50 an hour jobs with no benefits. And the Washington didn't even offer us rust-proof paint, and my people are fed up. I'm fed up, and we're not going to stand for it anymore. That's exactly what we're saying.
Jim?
That's what everybody in this audience is saying. And let me say one other thing. I'm nothing special. Any one of these people, any one of the people in our valley that were in my shoes would be doing and saying the same things, because what we're saying is right. It's time to forget about all these people all over the world and focus your attention on America, because America's in trouble.
I think it's time also that the congressman, the president, and the whole bunch up there in Washington take a look at what's going on in this country and say it has to start here with us. We have to take a cut. Everybody up there in Washington, none of you could come down to this town and work for the amount of money that you're making up there in Washington. And I think it's time you start at the top and take a pay raise there like everyone else in this valley and this area has done over the years.
How do you feel about that, Sheriff?
That's right, Phil. Don't forget I'm the sheriff now. I voted against the pay raise. I think with the deficits we have, Congress didn't need a pay raise. But let me say one other thing. The IRS takes most of my check anyway. But they're very wealthy people up there in Washington. But what has happened, these people come from all over the country. When they get inside that beltway, Phil, it seems like they sort of forget about the communities from which they came. I'll say one thing to you, and you could tell by all the polyester I killed and the way I dress that I haven't changed. And I think that's important, that we maintain that local flavor.
Let me show you one more time. Here's another moment, Congressman Traficant in the well of the House, early Friday morning. It's after midnight now, and this was during the debate that shocked the nation when the House membership voted against both sides of the aisle, voted against their own leaderships. Here is your congressman. Why is he voting no on the package?
Because it's no good. And I'm prepared to take the flak on having our government shut down, but having us come back and send a budget to the president that is good for this nation. And I don't like the last-minute shotgun affair. If this thing cured cancer, I'd vote no on it, because I'm tired of bills I don't have the time to read, and my people have been taxed to death. They're taxed off.
I have two questions. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I would like to know, do you think Saudi Arabia was a decoy away from our budget? And do you believe it's going to be another Vietnam? And also, what's happened over in Germany is nice. But do you believe that this country is becoming socialized and becoming a socialized system with all the individual rights like smoking in public, different music we're not allowed to listen to anymore, we get arrested for, the TVs, and et cetera, et cetera? I believe that local, federal, state is now become involved in taking away our individual rights instead of going for the big stuff.
You bring about a question that is a very serious question. And from day one in America, we have debated the issues of individual rights versus the rights of society. The individual has the right, they say, to take a knife if they so choose and stab themselves in the back and take their life, but the society says we have the right to protect the individual from harm. So it's tough debates. We fight to save those basic rights. But remember this, when it comes to rights, you can develop so many rights at times, it seems. For example, where murderers have all the rights in the world and victims' rights are printed on tombstones. So there's a fine balance in between. We protect those rights, though, and we constantly work to protect those rights. On Saudi Arabia, the Persian Gulf, we have a legitimate problem. But let me say this. We have now a $300 billion defense budget. The Iron Curtain has become a screen door. The Berlin Wall is a speed bump. It's not the same. Let's cut that back. America's greatest threat is not a foreign missile, it's our economic system. And this is now where we have to focus our energies and secure our national security with that type of initiative.
We're in Youngstown, Ohio with Congressman Traficant. We'll be back in a moment.
There are those who say we must balance the budget on the backs of the workers and raise taxes again. But they are wrong. I am not going to raise your taxes, period. Read my lips. No new taxes.
Trev, good morning.
Good morning.
I would like to know, what are we going to do to bring our prices of gas down? It's gotten too high.
And tell me about your feelings about the taxes on gasoline, and what do you expect it to be? We sure don't know from this thing you did at 3 o'clock this morning.
Well, the original proposal was that the gasoline tax at 9 cents now per gallon would be raised 5 cents next year, and then 5 cents the following year to 19 cents. I think that is ridiculous with these oil companies making windfall profits. I think they should be investigated and put in jail for antitrust violations.
Doesn't this whole Persian Gulf thing evolve around one three-letter word, OIL, oil?
I think that's part of it, but remember, we get very little oil, America oil, from the Gulf. Japan and Germany get almost 70% of their oil from the Gulf, and we're putting, out of 200,000 troops in Saudi Arabia, 165,000 of them are American soldiers. They're on the line over 80%. Let me say this. I think we should participate around the world to protect the interests of the free world. But all other nations should participate, and it shouldn't be our kids coming home in body bags.
Let me... Here's what you said about that from the floor of the House of Representatives on Thursday night. Here's the congressman from Youngstown.
There are 200,000 troops over in the Persian Gulf. 165,000 of them are Americans. This is a world problem. Let the world pay for it. Our kids keep coming back in body bags, and our taxpayers keep financing it. Let the United Nations work. 165,000 Americans is ridiculous. Let's get more people from other countries over there. And I say shut it down. It's better than crippling this nation's freedom with a bad bill.
For the record, the district that Congressman Traficant represents, as he's told us a moment ago, voted Democrat in the presidential election in 80, 84, and 88. How does it feel to be on the short end of the last 3 presidential elections? This is one of the few congressional districts in the nation,
Phil,
to have voted Democratic.
Our community is not on the short end. Our community made a decision, and they didn't buy the free lunch promises. And there are no free lunches. And I think our people live through very tough time. They're working people. They expect nothing for nothing. We're willing to work. But we don't want that song and dance before the elections anymore. We want the facts.
Hi. Honorable Traficant, our community has been hit hard with medical bills. What are we going to do about a national health program or a state health program? And another thing I want to say, JFK said, ask not what you can do for your country, but what can you do for you? What can you do for your country? How about the politicians taking that same attitude? What can you do, not just for yourselves, but for the taxpayers, for the people? We are people power. We are the government. Let's all fight for that. I lost a brother-in-law in World War II. What, did he die in vain?
Well, I think you bring up a good point. Many Americans say, look, we won the war, but did we? We financed Japan and Germany. Now they have great surpluses with us in trade. They buy our T-bills and finance our debt. When you own something, you control something. When you have economic control, you have political control. We have an awful lot of problems. But what I want to say to you is basically this. I didn't like the fact of putting all of those taxes, such as beer, alcohol, cigarettes, gasoline, If we had to do something like that to create a national health insurance program, the American people might buy it. But I think it's time the American people understand what the program is, how they participate, and what the policies are, and that they not only understand it, but they have a say in developing them. And I think if the American people understand it, they're willing to pay for those things that are important to them,
Right.
no more, no less.
Please give me a couple of specifics. I'll get to you a second here. Your position regarding the Persian Gulf. What is your understanding of the percent of all the troops arrayed in the Saudi desert? What percentage are American?
About 82% at this point.
And how do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Not that we don't want to stop an aggressor that has moved on a sovereign nation, but we have many nations around the world that are concerned about this aggression. I think they should all be participating in like kind, and it shouldn't be America always coming out with the checkbook and with our soldiers and our troops and our young people to pretend to protect the interests of the world.
Yeah. Were you consulted when we bombed Tripoli?
Not at all.
Were you consulted when we invaded Panama?
Not at all.
Were you consulted when we invaded Grenada?
Not at all.
Well, where were you then? How come you're not screaming? You're
Well, the
only in
president,
the Congress.
the president is the commander-in-chief. We have a War Powers Act after 60 days that they have to bring it back to the Congress to continue that type of involvement. However, the administrative White House people are trying to contest that now on its constitutionality. Let me say this to you. We made an awful lot out of Grenada. The Youngstown Police Department could have invaded Grenada successfully. We're now talking about a defense. I'm more concerned about people jumping the fence, coming into America, a stupid Congress giving them citizenship, and we're going bankrupt. I'd like to see us take our troops from overseas. Hear me. Take our troops from overseas, cut down on all that expense over there. Those are nothing but welfare programs for those overseas countries. Our soldiers are paying their checks. They're cashing their checks, spending their money over there. Bring them back. Put them on our borders. Keep the drugs out. Keep people from coming in here illegally. Take care of our country. That's common sense.
Phil, I think it's a tragedy that you've become a shill for Jimbo. I think you've sacrificed your credibility for ratings. Hey, Jim, that's right. You're holding a political rally here. Jim, you said you're still sheriff. Does that mean that you're still taking money from the mob? The people in this country need to know.
He beat the rap.
No, listen. There's a federal court that's found that he accepted bribes. There's a federal tax court using the standard of proof that we use in our everyday life has found that he accepted bribes.
Hang on a minute. Hey, I can explain this. They're not going to know what you're talking about across America. They got enough crime to worry about without worrying. Please let me in here a second.
Let me respond to this fellow.
The congressman was accused of taking mob money and beat the rap. He was found innocent. Now, wait a minute. Hold on a minute. 1 second. Listen, we're nothing if we're not honest. He did get nailed on an income tax charge, and he's paying his bill. All right.
Let me respond. Phil, let me respond.
Mr.
Let me respond one
Congressman,
time.
in all due respect to you, you told me when you first ran for office that you controlled the minds of the non-thinkers in this community. Why can't you go to Washington and control the idiot minds of the pseudo-thinkers in the nation's capital?
Congressman, you're on.
Number one, the second fella has... Number one, the second fella has just brought up a point that is ludicrous. He happens to be a member of a Jewish descent. The Jews are very upset with what I've done, and he's trying to take it out, and I'm not going to back down to any powerful group. Number one. Number two, the first fellow that asked the question was an attorney, and let me tell you what, if you're an attorney, I wouldn't want you defending me because you sounded like a fool. And finally, I want to make this statement. This is America. when you're tried by a jury of your peers. That's sacrosanct. Thomas Jefferson made a statement that I want you to remember as an attorney. He said, God forbid the appointment of federal judges for life because they can take the Constitution and mold it like clay in their hands. Thank God for juries.
Now,
one other thing.
Wait a minute.
One other thing. I'm not an attorney, and I stood on my own 2 feet. I looked him in the eye, and that's what we've got to start doing with our damn government now.
Yeah. Congressman.
And don't get me mad.
Hold it. Congressman, what is the reference to Jews? Explain that to us.
It's not a derogatory fashion, but this individual has been a member of an opposing party that's been challenging me.
Who has?
One of the individuals asked the question.
Well, why don't you tell us who he is?
Fine, Mr. Rubenstein.
Well,
He's come out. He's come out.
Yeah. He says he's a Democrat. Why would you make it a Jewish issue?
I'm not making it a Jewish issue. He happens to be of Jewish descent. Because of my involvement in a couple cases, I have been targeted by the World Jewish Congress. I've just come to learn through the grapevine. I'm not sure that the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee has targeted me. And usually when they do, they beat a congressman. But let me say this.
You have not then been supportive in your voting record for Israel. Is that your point?
Let me say this, and this is very important to me. I've been called an anti-Semite. The next person in New York calls me an anti-Semite, I'm going to drive up there and punch him in the mouth. Number one. Number two, let me say one other thing. I have looked into a couple cases. And I'm not going to apologize for it. And I am going to say something here today that's very unusual. I think the American-Israeli Public Affairs Committee has too much control, like many other lobbies, on our Congress in the government.
The lady behind me, Mr. Congressman, the lady behind me said, you Jews, you attorneys, you blacks, you're all alike. That's what you bring out in people. You just... The seed of hatred and the seed of bigotry that everyone carries around, you cultivate. You'll turn on Eastern Europeans, you'll turn on labor, you'll turn on blacks, you'll turn on anyone because you are a political opportunist. And the last time I said it, I got threatening phone calls.
Hey, Phil, I want to answer that. I think I deserve an answer. Here's my answer. This is my answer.
And we'll be back in just a moment.
To be part of the audience, write Donahue Tickets, care of NBC, New York, New York, 10112.
We're in Youngstown, Ohio with Congressman James-Traficant. Yes, sir.
Congressman Traficant, I've been a supporter of you, well, since before you were sheriff when you were down in Mill Creek Park. I just want to let you know, I'm a federal employee, and because of the votes, I'm officially right now out of work. But I still support you because you stand up for the working man. I look at my paycheck with all my tax deductions, and I think, where is this money really going? And I would like to think that most of it is staying here in the United States, but I don't see that. Keep up the good work anyway, and try to get me back to work, okay?
Let me make this statement.
Congressman Traficant, I just always wondered about the feasibility of cutting government aids in your offices, transportation and perks of government offices, and jobs like that. Couldn't that help find some more money for our budget?
The staffs are too large, you think?
Yeah, the staffs, the perks, the limousines, the transportation, all of your perks. If all of the Congress and senators gave up their perks, couldn't that help our budget, and to what extent?
I think there's no question that it could, and we should.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask the congressman, is he still sleeping on the couch?
Yes.
No, I'm sleeping in an old wooden boat, and I'm afraid it's going to sink.
Congressman Traficant, I think what you have done for this state, some of those people, like, they don't appreciate what you have done. It seems to me you have stepped on maybe some of his friends' toes, and he don't like it. Someone else should have gotten that seat this morning. I support you, and I hope I see you in the White House.
In all fairness,
I just have one comment to make. I think the way taxes are going in this country is that there's no middle class anymore. That the rich keep getting richer and the poor, which is the working person, keeps getting poorer. Because the rich evades the taxes and the working person has to pay for them.
that's exactly why I voted no.
Yes, yes.
That's exactly
I'd just
why.
like to say that it's about time we got somebody in there working for us, and I wondered what your views are on the National Endowment for the Arts censorship and women's right to choose.
Yeah, me too.
Rights is a very, very strong issue, and I think once you curtail rights to the point that you take away individual liberties, you begin to threaten the Constitution. I think there are some issues that can, in fact, be interpreted more strictly.
Well, non-answer, Congressman. I assume you agree with the jury in Cincinnati on the Maplethorpe exhibit. Found that man innocent.
I think some of those things are really weird and ridiculous. But again, you know, you have to draw the line somewhere. And I think what's happening, people are beginning to prostitute rights and freedoms, and they're bringing about change and legal decisions they may not like.
Leaning against the jury, then.
No, let me say this. Let me say this. When you take a crucifix and you submerge it in a glass of urine and you call it art, that isn't art. Hopefully artists would stick to art and they wouldn't force those types of decisions on the country.
Are you, hang on one second, please. So Maplethorpe exhibit's not coming to Youngstown? Huh? Are you pro-choice, Congressman?
I believe that the woman should have that right. I am not for abortion, but I believe she should have that right.
Mr. Traficant, recently another steel mill in Ohio closed, right there in Hubbard Township, Valley Vulcan. I was wondering how a big industry like Emco Pitt can come in not once, twice, but 6 times, file bankruptcy, and close another steel mill. How do they get away with it? Why aren't they investigated? What's going on?
What's happening in our country is we have a thing called LBO, leveraged buyouts, and we have companies that make money by transferring papers without making products. Congress should change that law and make it tougher to transfer paper so people would start once again producing a product to make a profit.
Sure.
Jim, the presidents are always talking about a line item veto. What I wonder about is why does Congress have to have a bill that has about 50 items attached to it so that Congress cannot vote on one issue or one bill without the whole package?
There's a lot of merit for a line item veto. The question is the Republicans wouldn't want to give Jimmy Carter that line item veto because he may have cut defense. And Democrats are concerned that he would cut away vital programs and maybe get into some of our entitlements. So it's a fine line, but I think it is coming to the point in America with our fiscal crisis that you will see some form of a line item privilege.
Yes.
Jim, I'm concerned about the educational system in our state and in our country. Our young people are our greatest resources. What will this new budget do to them?
This new budget and all budgets coming down the pike are going to continue to reduce and take away. We have reduced housing, education over the last 10 years while we built up the military. You can't have guns and books too, and we're going to have to make a decision.
Yeah, I assume you're against Star Wars.
I voted against Star Wars.
I assume you don't think we... Would you be willing to appropriate any money for a B-2 bomber?
Well, I think when you have a plane that can't be seen, can't be heard, can't be detected on radar, and can't fly, you shouldn't vote for it.
Congressman Traficant, I just want to say you're doing a beautiful job, and I'm praying for you daily, and God bless you, and just keep up the good works, and I love the Phil Donahue.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much.
Then we go back to
together along the way. You're doing a terrific job. To know you is to love you.
I appreciate it.
I want to know when they're going to stop trying to finance the country on the back of the elderly and on the hospitals.
I think there has to be major reforms in the healthcare system and major reforms in our prison systems. Number one, I think we're out of hand. We take 20 tests for a common cold anymore. The bills are so high, so I think there must be some address there. Second of all, we have so many people in jails anymore. We've gotten into the practice of putting young drug abusers, for example, who are not violent, into jails. They're getting raped and coming out with more problems. We have to reform two systems, our judicial system of our penitentiaries and our health system, and I think we have to move towards a national health insurance program that'll make America more competitive.
Congressman, I think you made a good point earlier about pushing through a bill too fast so the congressmen themselves don't know what's in the bill. Are the congressmen aware that the budget bill that is now under discussion would effectively destroy the state teachers' retirement fund and other public employees' retirement funds in the future? And why would they sequester those funds when you don't sequester your own pension fund?
I think it's a very good point. I think there's another area. Our pensions, many of them are underfunded. We're in very deep trouble. Our banking system's in very deep trouble. They say one major bank folds and it'll use up all the federal deposit insurance money. We've seen what happened to the savings and loan debacle. Everybody took care of their friends, now we're paying for it. With the pensions, I think that we should change to a quarterly system of contributions. And instead of giving 5 annual waivers where a firm can go for 5 years and then say they have no pensions, we should do it on a different basis. With the state employees, I'm very, very concerned about what they're trying to do. And everybody in Congress is, and that's one of the reasons why you had so many votes on that first budget of no.
We're going to trim Medicare benefits. You don't tell the people.
There's no doubt they're going to do that. And a statement I made on the House floor is I can't see how anybody can justify taking 1 dime from Medicare while we didn't even take 1 nickel out of foreign aid.
And we'll be back in just a moment. We are in Youngstown-Ohio with Congressman James-Traficant, Democrat. Yes.
Congressman, I know you very well. Keep up the good work. I have a son in Saudi Arabia right now, son-in-law, and I'd like to see him back as well as anybody else in this audience has their youngsters there. I didn't raise him or have him married to get killed in a foreign land.
So what do you want, Congressman?
I want you to talk about fossil fuels and whatever alternative fuels, so we hell out of there. We don't need to be there.
Let me say this. Let me make a point. I think it's very important. It's very important. Number one, to support any arms or weapons to be sold to any nation that may use them against Israel. Israel's our ally, and I support Israel, surrounded by monarchs and dictators. But I do not support $3 billion for Israel. I think it's too much, and I'm going to try and cut back on that foreign aid, including Israel's foreign aid.
Phil, I'd like to say that I agree with the congressman 100%. I think we ought to cut out some of this foreign aid. Right. We're going $3 billion a year to Israel. It's one of the biggest welfare states in the world. And one other thing that was a big problem in this valley, the sheriff cleared it up. I'd like to see more action toward the war on drugs. If they put Jim-Traficant in charge of the war on drugs, it'll be a war.
Yes, briefly. First, listen, running out of time.
I'd like to say that this fellow from Israel and all this stuff, I think we're all Americans. He's not in Israel now. We've got to stick together. We've got to stop buying so many foreign products. We got to stop driving foreign cars. We ruined the fabric industry in this country. Now we're ruining the auto industry. We've got to be Americans first.
All right. Yes,
Phil,
sir.
Let me make a point.
Mr. Traficant, how is the budget cuts on Medicare going to affect home health? I'm a home health care nurse, and I'm interested in it.
Tell you the truth, with the last resolution that's just been passed, it's going over the Ways and Means, and they'll be putting those types of things together, so I can't give you an exact answer now. We'll have to wait and see what their package is.
What is it you wanted to say briefly? Did you want to say something, Congressman?
Yeah, I think that what I was going
I'm
to
almost
say,
out of time.
What I was going to say is I hit you with it, and then you took off in another direction because you were completely out of control at that moment.
Hit me with what? Oh. Well, if you think I was out of control, you know, this is hardly a rare moment. Let me just, on our program.
That's what they say about me, Phil.
Listen, you think John Domeniuk was railroaded, don't you? The Ford auto plant worker from Cleveland who was uncovered and evidence was presented at trial showing him to be a worker in a Nazi death camp and a contributor to the death of uncounted numbers of Jews and others victimized by the Third Reich. You think he got a bad job by the courts, and in that position you side with Pat Buchanan, who's now got his own problems defending himself against accusations of anti-Semitism. I will give you a chance to respond in just a moment. John Domeniuk, did he get a railroad? Was he railroaded?
I don't know if he did, but when his family came to me and they said they broke no laws, and they went to 535 offices in the Capitol and no one would talk to them, I thought it was strange. I looked at their case and I found out that Otto Horn, a former Nazi guard, was lying in Cleveland, and I presented it to the courts. The Israeli Supreme Court last month showed quality. They accepted those two documents as official evidence, and that trial now is still on hold. We want to know who Ivan the Terrible really is. If it's John Demjanjuk, put him to death. But if it's not, let's find out who Ivan really is.
I'm concerned about environmental issues and companies and the military coming in and polluting our resources.
Yeah.
I didn't.
What do you want him to do?
I didn't hear the question. But
she's concerned. What military is polluting what resource?
Well, isn't it? I'm not even from Ohio, but I've done a lot of research and reading.
Okay.
Excuse me.
We've got 4 minutes left.
Okay, and isn't it Cincinnati where they have the military?
Outside Cincinnati, we do have leakage. We have 15 weapons plants are leaking as we speak. Congress.
Phil, federal legislation now treats those military establishments just like the private sector to stop that.
Just something brief. What are you going to do about our welfare system here in the Valley?
Yeah. The welfare system? I didn't hear the question.
Yeah.
I didn't hear the question.
Well, what are you going to do about it?
About what?
And well, the welfare system in the Valley, and will there be delays in welfare payments as a result of the budget?
Let me say this. With the shutdown to come down, and the federal worker in the back stated this, the last time that happened, the Congress came through at a later date retroactively and made all that money and made everybody whole. Let me say this is an important issue. Don't worry at this point about a short temporary shutdown. Be worried about 5 years of taxes is going to break your families and maybe lose your home, and lose your car, and lose your job.
And we'll be back in just a moment. I'm sorry.
Transcript of today's show, send $3 to Donahue Transcript, 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 1007, or call 212-227-READ.
Well, someday I'll have a longer show, but it's not today. First of all, thanks to J.D. Williamson, Vice President, General Manager, WKBN, Broadcasting, best station in the city. Barbara Armstrong, you're the manager of Stambaugh Auditorium, and your staff, we thank you. Mayor Patrick Ungaro, thank you. Edna Pincham is Executive Assistant, been very helpful. Captain Don Camara and the Youngstown Police Department, as well as the Ohio State Patrol. You've been wonderful. Yes, ma'am. You want to...
What I want to know was about the S&Ls.
What about it?
What is the...
Are you upset?
Yes, I'm frustrated.
What do you want to do about it?
I want the IRS to get after them and let them pay their fair share. They had the party. We have to pay the bill.
Yeah. Yes.
I think you're doing a great job, Congressman.
Trafficant for president, 1992.
You know, we instill many things upon our children, good qualities and all. And what is our Congress, our legislature, the whole government, when they don't set the examples at all?
Yes, here. Let me get somebody who hasn't had a time. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering what your fellow congressmen think about your style. Are they afraid to speak?
How do they feel about it? You're foursquare against your own party early this morning.
Many people in Washington are very upset with me
and promotional
because they
fees
call me
paid
a
by the
maverick, and I say